Well, hello, canning season is in full swing, and it's one of my favorite times of the year, besides Christmas, because you know me. But what is wonderful about it is you can make canning work for you, and I think that's the point of modern canning. You don't have to can 50 quarts of green beans like your grandma did, store them for a huge family over the winter. You can do that if you want to, and I still do some of that. Or you can do things that are fun and more just enjoyable for you that you're excited about, which is what today's is. It is a pickled cauliflower, and it's one of the things I love, especially because this year I had a bumper crop of cauliflower, and it's such a simple, fun thing. You can put these on snack plates, you can have them on a relish tray. I'm from the Midwest, so we say relish tray a lot because we have it with large meals, potlucks, and this is such a fun thing to have on it. It's also fun to have on a charcuterie board or anything you're gonna have. So, to start, you wanna always make your brine first, which is really simple and it's pretty much like any of my standard brines, but it's gonna be flavored differently. So first, we're gonna do some water. There's regular water. The thing with a pickle that you're gonna can with a vinegar brine, it's a pretty easy, obviously, thing to do because it's so safe because you're doing such a high ratio vinegar that unlike other things like green beans where you need to pressure can them because of the acidity levels, when it comes to something like this, it's super easy. And you can just have fun with it because that's what canning can be. And we're only making 6 pint jars, so it's not inundated with this. It's great for gifts, whatever you want. So I'm putting in the vinegar. And then the last thing we need to do for the first part of the brine is some salt. Now, I use canning salt, and canning salt, it does make a difference because it measures differently than other salts because it's more fine, and so it makes a difference when you use canning salt. So you have to adjust if you're not gonna use that. So I'm gonna put the brine on the stove, we're gonna let it come to a simmer, but we're gonna talk about what we're putting in the jars. I have some of the jars already packed, and for these, you can choose always between a wide mouth and a regular mouth jar. Now, each person has a different reason why. Wide mouth can be easier for people with large hands because you don't have a small one to get in. These are big pieces of cauliflower and the packing of them is pretty easy. And why I do like a shoulder on a regular mouth on these, I think as you can it, it helps keep the cauliflower kind of in place because it has that shoulder that's kind of helping keep it there. It's my personal preference. You can use a wide mouth, they kind of sometimes rise up than when they're canned. So what I start with when I'm doing these is a Serrano pepper. Now, if you are a little bit adverse to heat, you can of course take the seeds out of your serranos. That's gonna help, and the pith, because it's really that pith that has a lot of that heat. You can take all that out, or if you're like me, you don't. And you can even add less if you want to. I would be apt to add more. But a Serrano one, I just actually really like the flavor, but I really like that heat it gives it too. So I just put that in the bottom of the jar, and then we have our cauliflower. Now, I don't expect you to have necessarily always homegrown cauliflower, but I like to use something if I am gonna have it like this and have homegrown. So what I'm trying to do is just break it into kind of roughly bite-sized pieces. Just imagine what maybe someone could be comfortable picking up with either a fork or a toothpick, depending how you're gonna serve it. And then I just start by putting it in the bottom of the jar. So this is why some people would say a wide mouth is always better. I have long fingers, so I can get down there usually. But you kind of just start by packing it in. Now, this is gonna be my grandma and me coming out. I don't like to waste. So as we're cutting, you're gonna get stems and pieces. Now guys, these are tender, especially on homegrown. I will chop those up into nice bite-sized pieces and I will can those too. This literally, I feel like I am my grandma. We turn into our moms and grandmas. But the thing is, they taste just like cauliflower. They're a great crunch. Why would I waste that? Otherwise, you could just roast it too. So I'm gonna keep chopping these, keep packing the jars, and then we're gonna have some wonderful cauliflower pickle. I'm finishing up this last jar. I put a little bit of Serrano pepper on top too, but I pack these tightly because when hot brine hits them and when they go into that hot water bath, you know, they're gonna shrink, they're gonna condense a little bit. So I like to have them tight beforehand so we don't have too much, because what happens when they're not tight? They float up from the bottom. But you can't pack them too tight because they have so much airspace around them because they're cauliflower and they're irregular shaped. So when I do a pickle that has a lot of interesting flavors like this is gonna have, like spices and seeds, I don't like to put that directly in my brine because that's really hard to distribute when it's in a powder form in the brine between each jar and know you're gonna have that equal flavor as it sits there. I'm picky like that. So instead what I do, I put it directly in here. So I'm gonna start with some curry powder in each one. And what that is of course the wonderful, and you know, it smells so good and you get those fragrant, almost like warm spices. and just like delicious flavor. But what it's gonna do is kind of up the flavor, because what I'm doing is adding extra turmeric, which is in curry powder. And then on top of it, some cumin seed. Now, cumin seed obviously is unlike the powder, and I like it because I think the seed, there's something about the flavor that to me is slightly different. So I'm gonna add this to each jar, and then when we pour the brine on, it is just going to kind of melt into the brine. It's gonna really flavor each jar. The color to me is gonna be absolutely gorgeous because turmeric, I mean, beautiful. So I'm gonna finish putting these in the jar. My brine is just about boiling. We're gonna pour it on. It can be easy and fun to can. Let's take the fear out of it. So I'm putting the brine on. Now, as you am doing it, you can just see that color that is just kind of dissipating throughout them. I think it is just so beautiful. It is so perfect. And the smell in here, this is what I love. Obviously, it's kind of strong right now, but as they sit, they're gonna be so good. So this recipe I originally developed for a story I did with Better Homes and Garden in 2020 in an issue for August, which was all about canning, all about summer. And it's a recipe I had done before that, but I tweaked it, I perfected it, and it still is one of my favorites because I think it's just one of those interesting things that you don't have all the time, but they're delicious. So you take always a piece of paper towel that was in hot water and just dip it in hot water so it's a little wet, and you wipe off anything on the rim. So if you have spices on there, any of the brine, you don't want anything sticky or any residue, because that could inhibit a good seal. So we have our prepared lids and then our rings, which, you know, you reuse jars year to year, because if you can, that's what you do. So you always want to check your jars too for any nicks or anything that could be bad. You tighten the rings to fingertip tightness, which just means you don't do it until you can't turn anymore, but just till it wants to like click almost tight. So we have them all ready. This is why I do it on a pan, so I can just pick it up. We can go over to our hot water bath, which is ready to go. Now, if you're not used to it, you can buy a hot water bath that has everything ready to go, because you want to make sure it comes with a rack that holds the jars up, lifts them off the bottom of the pan, because sometimes a glass jar directly on the heat can cause a break, so you don't want to do that. So I'm putting all the jars in here. You want them to be covered by the boiling water by at least an inch. Once it comes to a boil, it was boiling, but when you put your jars in, it will always kind of slow down. Once it's at a boil, we're gonna time it. We're gonna pull them out. Oh, guys, this is exciting. The timer went off and I am taking them out. So as I take them out, this is just a small thing, I slightly tip them just to get a little bit of that water off the top. It would evaporate too, but I don't know. It's just one of those things that after you do something long enough and enough years, you kind of get those little quirks and you do it. Look how pretty and yellow it is already. I love the color of these. I think they just have such a beauty to them. And the flavor of them is, to me, what's amazing. It has so much intense, delicious flavor, but it's well balanced. This is why I do everything on racks. You can just pull it with you wherever you need. So once you can something, you always want to let it sit 12 to 24 hours. Come down to room temperature, fully seal. As you can see at the moment, they're all still slightly puffed up, and that seal will actually indent. You'll hear a little ping, which is music to a canner's ears, and that means all the air has released or escaped from inside the little headspace of the jar, and it's at a safe standing point. You know, after that, then after those 12 to 24 hours, I take the ring off, make sure it's a good seal, because you can sometimes not see what's going on. So you want to take that ring off, make sure it's sealed, store them I store them in my basement, but you know, anywhere you're going to store a canned good is going to work in at least a year. I sometimes keep mine longer than a year, but guess what? You don't want to try these yet. In a few weeks, they taste good already, but I happen to have one. So you can see this is a wide mouth, and I couldn't pack it as tight, you guys. But look. Oh, I could eat that whole jar. What I love is, okay, then the spice comes in. That's what I like. You get a little bit of it back there. So you can see the serranos in the bottom. All the seeds from the cumin and everything are down at the bottom. The flavor, it's not just like spice, it's amazing flavor along with that little hit of spice. And it kind of just gets you right here where you just want more. I love these. I hope you enjoy them. What do I hope you do with it? I hope you share it around, because yeah, that helps me. but it helps everyone see that this is so fun, it is doable. You can make a few jars of something in not even a couple hours, in under a couple hours, and have fun with it. Whether it's for gifts, it's for yourself, for family, for fun, for friends, it's worth it. Try it out, and as always, check my website, wiseguide.com, for this recipe, so many other recipes, garden tips, indoor, outdoor, I'm all over the place. So until then, have some fun, be nice, enjoy good food. That's the point, makes the world go round. Can something.